Hello, welcome to episode 129 of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode today is with Jen. Jen is the mother of 2 children who have type 1 diabetes. And for that reason, and that reason alone, I call today's episode 2 with 1. Today's episode is sponsored again by Dexcom and Omnipod. Please go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or the link in your show notes, or dexcom.com/juicebox, or again, the link in your show notes, or do all those things and find out more about these 2 wonderful products. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making changes to your healthcare plan.
My name is Jen. I have 4 kids. My third child, Jake, who's now 7, was diagnosed with type 1 when he was 2. And then our 4th child, Annie, who's now 2.5, was just diagnosed about 2 weeks ago.
Now, Annie is 2.5 now, but she was recently diagnosed?
Right. She was just diagnosed a couple weeks ago. Actually, she's almost doing 3/4 if we want to get technical. She'll be 3 in May, and it's late February now. So we passed kind of what I had in my mind as the time when she would be diagnosed, which was like right when Jake was diagnosed. He was like 2 and a month. So I was like, oh, good, we passed this. We're good. So
it happened to him when he was 2, and so
clearly I don't know how these things work. So.
You don't think there's a rhyme or reason to it? Let me go right back to the beginning to double check on a couple of things. So do you have any other endocrine issues in your immediate family or in your extended family?
So there's some type 1 sprinkled throughout both sides of our family. I've learned more in the last couple of weeks, actually, that my great-grandmother had type 1, but she died in 1927 of meningitis. So she had just started using insulin, one of the first few people. But it wasn't the diabetes; it was meningitis, and she passed away young. And then my husband has 3 first cousins with type 1, 2 diagnosed in their 20s, 1 at age 9. So that's I guess enough. And there's a little bit more on my side too.
Yeah, it sounds like wedding gifts are like pens and needles and stuff like that.
I tell you, although I didn't really. I mean, we knew a little bit of this, but I kind of feel like you can't live your life in fear and make choices based on possible negatives, So
Absolutely.
we march along and pray for the best.
Man, no kidding. And then and your great grandmother, that's like right out of Game of Thrones. Like she got type 1 diabetes, but then meningitis got her.
I know.
I was waiting for you to tell me a dragon slayed her.
It could have been. I mean, you know how things change. Stories change throughout the years, so it very well could have been a dragon.
That's really tough. I mean, that's hard luck. It really is. But I guess you have to really take in mind it wasn't that long ago that the medical community wasn't what it is now, and so that's really something. Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I got a little stuck on grandma. So you guys when you get married?
Got married 2004.
Did you forget, or you just went to?
Maybe. I had to do that.
I heard you slow down a minute. You were like, I got married.
Like, am I married?
So 2004, you've been busy, obviously. You have bought your OB at least a car and a half at this point, and 4 kids, which is really crazy, and congratulations. It's amazing. I think of anything over 2 as I genuinely find what you're doing to be impressive. I don't know how you keep 4 little children alive at the same time. But when 2 of them have type 1, I mean, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to have 4 kids when 2 have type 1?
Well, we're only 2 weeks into the double trouble here, but it's to be honest, having another one with type 1, it really isn't that different, and I'm pretty shocked at that, especially since little Annie, our youngest, is just on shots. So, and that makes it a little trickier. Jake is has the Omnipod, and he's got a Dexcom, and even Annie, actually, I've already put on Jake's old Dexcom on her. So that makes that part a lot easier too. But it's, I was weighing out his pasta, so I'm just weighing out her pasta. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Things are just a little more complicated around mealtime and, checking another CGM. But I'm surprised. I'm surprised because I thought it was going to be a million times worse.
Do you think, I don't want to rain on your parade, but do you think that she's honeymooning right now? Is that?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. She's not on much insulin. She's on 1.5 units of Lantus, and her insulin to carb ratio is 1:60.
Oh, so, okay. Jeez.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming she doesn't eat 60 carbs in a shot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and what was so interesting is that what happened when we found out she had type 1 is she peed her pants a couple times the same afternoon. And when I went to pull her pants up, it kind of smelled like maple syrup. And I was like, this is a little odd. Is that normally how this smells? And I Googled it, of course. And no, your urine is not supposed to smell
like maple syrup.
In case you were wondering. Of course, I wanted it to be like, all urine smells like maple syrup.
How did I live this long and not know this? Right. But you said in your email that you sort of lived in fear of, like, once you had one child with type 1, and obviously you have a litter of children that are running in every direction. And so you were concerned that it was going to happen again. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what was it like to live and just keep thinking, like, because it sounds like you were just waiting for the other shoe to drop over and over and over again. And then it finally did. But what was it like before it happened?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, I would have periods, or I think my husband and I both, I'm a little more vocal about worries than he is. But, if one of our kids asked for a drink of water, I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're in DKA. Yeah. I'd have days like that. Or I would have, be periods, weeks and weeks and weeks where I didn't worry at all about anything. So I think I think you're on high alert. The minute you have a child with type 1, you worry about your other kids. I think that's only normal, and it didn't exactly like take over my life at all. But
no, I understand. You weren't wandering around muttering to yourself or anything like that, but it was in your head at times, you're saying.
Yeah, the possibility. But I did, I had researched, but before we decided to have a fourth child, Jake had already been diagnosed with diabetes. We knew it was a possibility. And I'm a dietitian, so I looked at, is there any way I could possibly prevent this food-wise? There was a study that just came out about if you eat gluten-free while you're pregnant and breastfeeding, there's a chance that could prevent type 1 in a sibling. So I was like, all right, I'm doing that, gluten-free, no problem. And, you supplement your infant with vitamin D every day. That's a possibility. So I kind of thought, well, I've done what I can. I'll say some prayers and let's continue to grow our family.
Right.
And we'll roll the dice, and chances are slim that this will happen.
Well, now I feel bad for you for having to, because you ate gluten-free for 9 months and it didn't do what you were hoping.
Hey, you know what? It's all right. It was fine. It was a good way to lose the baby weight after having the baby. So
that's excellent. Well, so you were saying that Jake has a he's using a Dexcom CGM. He's wearing an insulin pump. And at what point did he get involved in that sort of stuff? I mean, did you start early on? I mean, he's been at it for 5 years.
Yeah. So he, when he was first diagnosed, after about 4 weeks, he went off Lantus completely. So it was another 5 months of no Lantus. And so we really couldn't do a pump because he wouldn't have had a basal rate. But as soon as he started needing Lantus again, we got him on a pump, and we had to switch endocrinologists because our endocrinologist was not a big fan of the pump until they'd been diagnosed a year, and some of those silly rules they have. So
some arbitrary rules.
Yeah. So we switched, and he was on a pump within a week or two of our first appointment with the new endocrinologist. So he wasn't quite 3 yet. And at the time, we really wanted the Omnipod, but it was the slightly bigger one, and he was a teeny little guy. And we really needed that low basal rate, the 0.025 units an hour. So we started him on the Animas Ping, and then as soon as the new smaller Omnipod came out, and he was needing a little bit more basal, we switched. So it was actually like he was only on the Animus for about 6 months, and then we were on the Omnipod.
Oh, wow. Well, that's cool.
And a few months after the Animus is when we got him on the Dexcom, and that was even before the pediatric version came out. Our endocrinologist is just fantastic, and she just wrote the prescription for the adult one, and off he went. So.
And that's been benefiting him because I think you mentioned in your email, his A1C is pretty good, right?
He's pretty good. Yeah, he's 6.2.
Yeah,
we have an appointment next week. So
that's really amazing. That it really is. And do you think so you didn't have a whole lot of time without technology, I guess, really, because, like you were saying, you only needed mealtime insulin for a while, and then you got right to a pump. So you really don't know any different. And now that Annie's diagnosed, and she's almost in a similar situation, she's in a little tiny bit of Lantus, a little tiny bit, I'm assuming, of mealtime insulin. So you're it's just starting over for you again.
Right. And we're hoping that she doesn't go off the Lantus. We have an appointment next week, and I have to tell you, I am so ready to put her on a pump on my own, but I am trying not to be the doctor. But
right.
But I have a whole backup system for Jake. I have a backup PDM, plenty of pods. I'm ready.
Just doing it? Yeah.
I'm so tempted. I'm not going to. I think that I would lose some trust of our endocrinologist if I didn't let them, give us the go-ahead.
You're delightful. You want to make sure that they feel like they're in control of the whole thing. You're going to let them feel like they've made the decision.
Isn't that nice?
No, Jen, you're a seasoned married person. I see what you're doing right there. Now,
great idea.
Your husband is somewhere right now thinking he's making most of the major decisions in your household.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
You're just leading him to it and letting him think it's his idea. That's great. Okay, you know what? So that's I think that's super interesting because you're a good look into. Some people are like, oh, I don't know what to do, and I'm waiting for someone to tell me, and wait till the doctor says, and the doctor didn't say anything, so I guess we're not going to do it this time. But you're at your house going, I have the gear, I'm completely comfortable just putting it on it right now, and I love your attitude about it. That's fantastic, really. I get that you want to let the doctor feel involved, but just your overall attitude, the way you're just like, I could just do this right now, and it would be fine. I think that's wonderful. And are you always like that? I mean, were you even like that with Jake, or is this something that's coming with comfort after Jake having diabetes already?
Well, I think, as I know, we all, as parents of type 1s, have realized we're so much better at knowing how our kids react to different foods and insulin than anybody, whether they're an expert or not. And I, with Jake, I would experiment with changing tiny, a little basal change here, a little basal change there, a ratio there. And, I usually worked it out on my own. And then once I felt like we got to a good place, I'd send numbers to the endo and say, hey, does this look good? And so I guess so. Yeah, I guess I like to take matters into my own hands.
Now, I can tell you that a few weeks ago, these all come out of order, so it doesn't really matter. But a few weeks ago that Arden had her endo appointment, her A1C was terrific again, and it was 5.8. Isn't that amazing? I forget. Ooh, actually, can you show it with me?
It's like she doesn't have diabetes.
No, but hey, we're going to do Arden's insulin for her lunch together. Hold on 1 second. So they have half days today because of parent-teacher conferences. So I say hello. Her blood sugar is 91. She's going to eat in 10 minutes. All right, let me think about what's in her lunch. Half a bagel, Nutella, popcorn, chips, grapes, carrots, yogurt, a drink that has a little bit of sugar in it. Bolus, 9.50, extend. What do you think, 40% or 50%, Jen? 40, 50. She's going to get high if I don't give her at least 40% now, and the rest over 30 minutes. Jen, should I send a heart or something? I'll send a heart.
At least a smiley face. You got to do something.
All right. Let's see what she says. She probably tell me to jump off a bridge or something. Hold on a second. She's getting very, very, lots of personality as she gets older.
Right, so. I'm sure. I know my oldest is a girl. She's 11. So we're seeing
You're so close.
I mean, it's already there. It's there, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better.
She is on the precipice of just. She's going to kill me, I think. We used to say when she was little, one day Arden will make some lucky boy very unhappy. But
as long as you approve of him, that's
she's
fine.
She's got a lot of. I think it's fantastic, but she knows what she thinks. That's for sure. So okay, so she'll be fine. And let me quit this program because we don't need that running while we're recording. 2 nights ago, I watched Arden change her Omnipod. It was time to change it, and she just went off in the kitchen and did it herself. I used to think it was amazing how fast I could change it, and then I watched her, and I thought, wow, this is not taking her much longer than it takes me. I don't know how aware you are of the machinations, which is a word from another century, that you have to go through to change an insulin pump with the tube pumps, but you have to prime the air out of the tubing, and there's a lot more going on than you may be led to believe. Omnipod is spectacular. You take the pod out, you fill the syringe, you put the syringe in the pod, you press down, you push a button or two, it primes itself, you stick it on, you push another button, it auto-injects the cannula, and it's done. I have genuinely, myself, changed an Omnipod in less than 2 minutes at times. And to watch Arden do it with such ease was, I don't know, it was heartwarming, to be perfectly honest, to see her be able to do something that I think of as so important, that is so important, that can be difficult with other devices. To watch her do it so simply was just a nice feeling. Not only is she not tethered to something and has the ability to eat when she wants and bolus without injecting herself all the time and, without having to yank this crazy thing off her belt, but it's just easy. I love it. I've done the worst job with an ad ever, but I love the Omnipod. I hope you try it. myomnipod.com/juicebox or the link in your show notes. Go try a free demo pod. There's no obligation. See what you think. Yeah, so anyway, so we're at the endo. She gets a great, her A1C's great. And we come home, I'm like, but you know how it is. Like, you don't get to celebrate too long. I spent like 2 days feeling good about it. And then all of a sudden I started seeing there was like drifting numbers. And then overnight, oh my gosh, 3:30 in the morning, no matter where her blood sugar was, it wanted to go up and like quickly. And I was like, come on. Like, I just had this great news and I was trying to live in it for 5 minutes if I could, but no, I guess not. And so I'm like, all right. So my first inclination was I thought she might have had a head cold. So I just got in the game and I just got up and I was bolusing at 3:30 in the morning and cranking up basal rates and stuff like that. And I went 3-4 days with it and I just was finally like, I don't think this is a cold. Like, it's not passing. She's not getting sick. You know what I mean? Like, it's, this can't be right. And it took me another couple of days. And then I guess maybe my exhaustion took me to it. But I brought her over to the little place on the wall where we measure the kids. And I was like, hey, real quick, let's see. And she's like a half an inch taller than she was the last time.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, you're growing, right? And I said, at some point, can you jump on the scale today? She jumped on the scale. She had put on some weight. And I'm like, okay, you're growing. You're getting bigger. I don't even think this is a growth spurt. I think you've gained enough weight and you've gotten bigger. I've got to bump your basal rates up. Now, I wish everyone could see me doing that because there's quite honestly no math to what I'm doing whatsoever. So I'm just like, I'm like, oh, she's 0.95 an hour. How about 1.10? We'll try that. And then, there was a time where she was 0.8. And I was like, that's not going to work anymore. So that went up to like 1. And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And I was like, I got everything pushed up. I let this one gap of time go in the afternoon where she's been getting low after school sometimes. But even that wasn't enough. So I had to bump that up a couple days later. And as soon as I made those changes, oh my gosh, Jen, as soon as I made those changes, everything's great again. And she just needed, I almost like I almost like when I was done, I was like, God, I almost didn't take my own advice. You know what I mean? Like I was, by the way, nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast, even something that I tell myself is advice, medical or otherwise, Jen. But you know what I'm saying? I almost didn't take my own advice. I was like, her blood sugar was high. She needs more insulin. And, I started getting lulled into that, like, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. And I started getting, like I've been saying a couple times in the podcast, like sometimes you hear people say, oh, the blood sugar got high. Why? And I keep telling them, like, who cares why? More insulin. If your blood sugar's high, you need more insulin. You can figure it out later. Don't worry about it now. I actually got caught up in worrying about it now. But now.
Test too, because you can't change everything at once, because then you don't know what worked or what isn't going to work. You have to do one little change and then, okay, that didn't work. Okay, another change. It's
right. It's a process.
There's no instant gratification.
No, my gosh, not at all. Like first you have to recognize it, then you have to watch it to see if it's repeating. Then you kind of got to give it enough time to say, I guess this isn't going to stop. And then, like you said, then you make an adjustment. Did that work? If that didn't work, maybe it's something. I mean, my goodness, I was just. And now I'm going to tell you something now. The last 4 nights, I have slept so well. Oh my gosh, so well. Like right through the night. So happy. Yesterday I woke up and I said to my wife, I'm like, I actually might be refreshed. Like instead of just sleeping so that I don't die, I
right. Hanging on by a thread.
Yeah. I'm going to close my eyes now so that I don't pass out. Instead of that, I'm actually feeling rested. And it's
That's
fantastic.
a good feeling.
Yeah, my gosh. Yeah. Look what I'm willing to accept as as positive in my life.
I know. Sleep. I always say that with sleep, if I didn't get a good night's sleep, you could tell me I won the lottery and I could care less.
Right.
Sleep is like, because my outlook after a bad night's sleep is so crummy. It's not that I don't have energy. I can still have energy. It's more of a mental outlook.
Yeah, you get a little foggy too. I talked about it a long time ago, but I was in such a bad gap for a period of time with sleep that I had completely lost who I was. I had no personality left anymore.
Yeah,
and
total autopilot.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible, really. So okay, wow. So Annie, at all comforted that Jake has it? Like, I mean, she's 2.5. It's pretty tough to, I guess. How did she handle being diagnosed and needing shots?
The shots have not been the best, but the last couple of days she's gotten better. We've given her Tic Tacs every time she gets a shot, and
nice. That's
working out.
May I ask real quick?
Yeah.
Orange, white, minty, which Tic Tacs?
Orange. Yeah, well, they were just what we had in our house for some reason.
I don't know why I wanted to know. All of a sudden, I was like, I wonder what kind of Tic Tacs she got. But go ahead.
Orange. But the night we tested her blood sugar, I waited till my husband came home from work because I really did suspect it and I didn't want to be alone. So I waited for him to come home and we tested her and saw the 418 number. Wow. And immediately Jake said, Annie, you have diabetes. Let me take you to the basement. We're going to diabetes camp. And so it was.
Did you say, oh my God, I didn't know that kid was running a diabetes camp in the basement?
I was like, what kind of operation is this?
Why are we not getting cut in? We're providing the space.
So it was such a heartwarming and heartbreaking moment all at the same time. Mm-hmm. But immediately he embraced her and she kind of thought, wow, this is fun. And we got her a little diabetes bag just like his, but hers is purple, and so she's, I think she's only 2.5, but she's pretty psyched about it, and the shots have gotten better, and I don't know if I mentioned, but I put Jake's old CGM on her the minute we got that 400 blood sugar.
Yeah, you did. You said it in the email, but I'm glad you're talking about it here. So you had another CGM, and you were like, boom, right on.
Yeah, I had the old one that before we had the share, so it doesn't have share with it. But so I put it on her. We did the 2-hour startup. I tested her at midnight that night. She was 485, but because she didn't have ketones, our doctor said, just come. You don't have to come tonight. Just come tomorrow to the hospital.
Were you tempted to give her some insulin?
Super tempted, yes. But, it was so cool to see, without giving her insulin, her blood sugar went from 485 at midnight to 92 by 7 in the morning.
Wow.
No insulin, just her body. So that was a sign to me, because our doctor, when I first talked to the doctor, and I was, not super psyched about having to talk about it, but, she said, well, this could be just an illness coming on, do the fasting blood sugar in the morning. And if I had just gone on that, I would have done the fasting and it would have been 92, and I would have thought, okay, we're good. Everything's fine. She doesn't have ketones, we're good to go. But because I had that CGM on her, she had one waffle, 15 carbs, and immediately shot up to 300 on the CGM. So that's not an illness, that's type 1. So that it was just great to have that CGM up and running. And I knew, that's how valuable it was to me with Jake. So I was like, we have this thing. Let's charge it up and go for it.
Good for you. I think you're now the living embodiment of what I've been saying for so long, that at some point, if I think people should leave the hospital with a CGM. I think if you're diagnosed, and you want it, you have insurance or whatever it ends up being. But I'm just saying, in a perfect world situation, I think you should just have it right away. And I know some people say I don't need it or I don't want it or whatnot. But what I'm saying is, if you were, I don't know what to say. I guess if you were diagnosed with some sort of a heart ailment and needed a heart monitor, you would leave the hospital with a heart monitor. They wouldn't say, hey, you really should have a heart monitor, but you don't need it. You probably just have a heart attack, but it's fine. No one talks like that about all other things, right? But something like your blood sugar that is so incredibly difficult to understand and maintain with type 1 diabetes, even when you have a glucose monitor, it is nearly impossible. You're completely blind. There's every euphemism in the world has been given in the diabetes community over and over and again, but your blood sugar is moving around and you don't know. You're just guessing. You're picking these data points randomly at certain times and thinking, this is great. And I was talking about the other day, there's a person online who, I forget which way it was, but they were like, they had either a great day or a bad day. Every time they tested, their blood sugar was either perfect or way off. And I thought they could have just randomly tested it 5 different times and had a completely different feeling for what happened that day. None of it's valid. Before I get right into the heart of the ad for Dexcom, let me just say this. If you're an app developer or inclined in these goings-ons or understand what these next few words mean, you're going to be very excited. Dexcom has opened up their API to third-party app developers. Now, if you didn't understand what those words mean, just know that one day there's going to be a lot of really great apps that you can use for your Dexcom. And if you do know what those words mean, get to work. There's a link in your show notes to the developer page. Get there. Find out what you can do to expand the world of diabetes technology. All right, Dexcom, continuous glucose monitor. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm probably talking about it constantly, that and the Omnipod over and over and over again, because these tools are the key. They're the cornerstone of how we do everything that we do. Now, there's a couple of aspects to the Dexcom that make this all the amazing thing that it is. Let me go over them for you one at a time. First one, share and follow. Being able to see someone's blood sugar so that maybe if it's a child or a loved one or who knows who it is, if they miss an alert, you don't. You have backup. It's amazing. So they have the Share app on their phone or their glucose monitor, right? And then you have the Follow app on your phone, Android or iPhone, by the way. And then you can get these alerts like, hey, my blood sugar's going down, my blood sugar's going up. This is how fast it's going up. This is how fast it's going down. Decisions need to be made, and here I am involved right away. The peace of mind is extraordinary. How about that Dexcom's recently received FDA approval? You don't need to test to treat anymore. You can make insulin decisions right from your Dexcom. That's fantastic. So not only are you getting the rise and fall alerts, not only do you have the compatibility with Android and Apple, not only can you see how fast and what direction your blood sugar is going, not only can the person who has diabetes see it, but a person who loves them can follow along and see it. My God, it's amazing. You need more? Okay. How about the Clarity app that helps you track your blood sugar over time? That's free and available to everyone who has Dexcom. What else? How about this? How about that my daughter's thresholds on her Dexcom are set at 70 and 130. And most of the time, she stays between 70 and 130. And when she starts to go outside of that range, we can immediately make these adjustments. And of course, your results will be different than mine perhaps, but we immediately make these adjustments, and that's how we stay back between this range, 70 to 130. There's no crazy spikes most of the time, no crazy lows. And when they do come, if they do come, and it's diabetes, they will come, you see them before they're happening, and you can stop them. It's spectacular. Please go to Dexcom.com/juicebox or click on the link in your show notes and find out more about the continuous glucose monitor that makes my heart warm. Dexcom.
Well, and I think with new diagnoses, I mean, it's like on a Wednesday you don't have diabetes and on Thursday you do. And so you go from being like any old kid to all of a sudden you're getting poked and pricked 300 times a day. And if you have a CGM, you don't have to poke as much, So it's a nice transition into diabetes where it's a little bit more gradual. So
you have such great language around this. I don't even know if you realize it or not. You've so far described Annie as being psyched to have diabetes, and which I thought was fantastic, by the way. And I didn't want to stop. I thought that was really great because what you were able to see is that there was portions of what was happening that she was excited about. Like she, found a kinship with her brother over something, and they had something to do. And I was like, wow, that's a really you would not hear a lot of people say that. And I guess that your perspective is insanely different because you've already had one child with it. It's just you are coming from a completely different place than you would be if so. I guess talk about that for a little bit. Like what did you feel like when Jake was diagnosed? I'm assuming you didn't think he was psyched about it because he got a new bag.
Definitely not. And so when Jake was diagnosed, he was showing signs. I thought maybe diabetes. I didn't really want to think diabetes. So one night he was up all night, just kind of like moaning, unhappy, and he was 2. So I was like, he's got an ear infection. So I took him to the pediatrician the next morning, and they were like, no, his ears are clear. And meanwhile, he was chugging water. They're like, oh, good, keep him hydrated. He's just getting over a cold. And so off we went home, and then a couple nights after that, he wet through his diaper so much that I had to change his crib sheets. That happened 2 nights in a row. And so I was doing nutrition counseling in a clinic. So I borrowed a glucometer, and I asked the nurses, how do you use this thing? I just want to, check this off the list, make sure my child doesn't have diabetes. And when I got home with it and tested him, and he was 560, I think I said a curse word, and then I started crying, and I called my husband. I said, this is happening, and he's like, it's okay. He's like, this is no big deal. I'm coming home, not a problem. And he said to me, I was devastated. I was like, this is the light. This is his new life. That he's only 2. I definitely did not take it well. But my husband said, we've been so blessed, and our kids are awesome. And if this is that one thing that happens in our lives, like this is so manageable, and everybody's healthy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love this man.
Yeah.
And so he kind of kept me from losing it. And then, interestingly enough, when we tested Annie's blood sugar and it was high, he felt more devastated. I certainly felt devastated. It's, it's heartbreaking. But I felt like I had to keep him more calm. We switched roles this time around. So,
do you think it was the daddy-daughter thing versus the... does he have that kind of feeling towards the girl?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was probably some of that, and some of like he kind of felt like we already got our kind of cards filled for life.
I see.
Like why is this happening again?
Yeah.
We kind of get our pickle already.
The guy that got struck by lightning the second time stands up and goes, come on. Or the video that I saw online yesterday. Oh my gosh. Right. That I really looks real. It's like surveillance footage from the front of a building. There are these 2 people walking down the street. Tell me if you've seen it. And they're walking down the street, and they are adjacent to a highway, but nowhere near it. I'm talking about they may be hundreds of feet, a football field, maybe not a football field, half a football field, 3/4 of a football field away from this thoroughfare. and they're just walking, everything's fine. Then all of a sudden you see this thing out in the distance and it kind of blips on the screen. And then it goes into this grassy thing that's between them and the highway, and you see this dirt poof up in the air. And then this thing bounces and it does it again. It's a tire. It bounces 3 times, and the third time hits the guy right in the back of the head. And I'm telling you, it was flying. And I thought he was dead. The video says he didn't die. But if you can stop and wonder about that, like, how could a tire fly off a car, bounce 3 times, and hit me directly in the back of my head, right? Like that's one of those things where that guy, for the rest of his life, I hope he survives and he's fine. He's gonna have that feeling your husband had, right? Like, nothing else can happen to me. I get hit by a flying tire. How could anything else go wrong? So I do get that, like, that feeling of like I'm already shouldering my share of this. You know what I mean? But I guess it just is not. I can't
handle anything else. Like, I've been given my Chromie card for life, right. And we're all set.
But so, you are handling it, right?
We are, yeah. And I think it was a definitely a couple days of just real sadness for both of us. And then you see how happy your child is, how much more energy they have now that they're getting insulin. How funny they still are, and you just start feeling blessed that you've got these great kids, and it's manageable. It is manageable, especially nowadays with the technology, and
No, I think it's a fantastic attitude. It just genuinely is. I mean, you're so, it's such in the beginning, and I'm assuming it's going to ebb and flow around on you at points. I'm sure you might call me back in 6 months and be like, take that podcast down. I hate this whole thing, and I do not have a good attitude about it anymore. But it'll, it's going to be what it's. I mean, listen, I've said it a million times, and I think sometimes I must come off as much more like chicken soup for the soul than I actually am. But I just think that, I have 2 kids. My wife and I have 2 children, and before we had them, we really tried to consider, like, what would it mean to be parents? Like, what was it going to take? And I think that there are some times that people say, hey, I'm willing to do these things, right? If a truck comes, I'll jump out in front, that kind of thing. Like, I'll take the bullet, that feeling. And then you do see people a lot of the times, the bullet comes and it's bigger than they expected it would be, and they sort of sidestep it a little bit. They're like, well, I didn't mean that. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't mean I could never do this again or not again. And I just think that you don't get promised anything. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be what it's going to be. And we wanted to have the kids. So now it's our responsibility to take care of them in whatever form that takes, I guess. And I think that sounds like how you feel about it. So, I mean, it is what it is. I wish it wasn't. I see other people running around. Their lives seem fairly carefree. I'm sure they don't think they are, but I saw somebody the other day at spring break around here, not spring break, but like parent-teacher conferences. The kids had off like a Friday and a Monday, so it was a 4-day weekend. And I watched a family just decide on Thursday night to go away. And they just flew somewhere and they were gone. And I was like, I wonder if I could have done that. But I don't feel like I could have. And I don't feel restricted by diabetes as far as travel goes. My life just seems not that simple. I don't know. You know what I mean? But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, things take a lot more thought. There's a lot more, like we go to run to the grocery store now, and I'm like, okay, you got your kit. Do I have my wallet? Do I, where are the keys? And so it's like, a lot more things to think about. But anyway, I mean, I think with the 2 kids with type 1, even just the night when we tested Annie's blood sugar and we saw that she was on the same path as Jake, he pulled me aside and whispered, he's like, hey, Mom, I'm actually kind of happy that Annie has diabetes. Now I'm not the only kid in the family. And it, again, it was like a heartbreaking, heartwarming moment, but it made me realize, I think as a parent, you wonder what's going to happen way down the road when you're gone and they're on their own. And I thought to myself, how awesome that these 2 kids are going to have each other for the long haul. They're going to be like, that's awesome. And Jake has always had such a good attitude, and I hope this continues, about diabetes. He likes being special. He likes hanging out in the nurse's office. He's happy about diabetes at this point. So, I hope that that of course continues, but I didn't know that he felt like he was the only one, and that was maybe a negative too within our family. So.
Right. No, I mean, I think first of all, I think that makes a ton of sense, and I think that I don't see how you couldn't feel like that. Like, wow, it's me. Especially the more siblings you have, right? Like if it's just two, then you can kind of be like, well, one of us got it, one of us didn't. But when it's you and the three others didn't, you probably that probably does. I always say that. Once or twice a year, Arden will say or do something that really indicates to me that her thought process about diabetes is much deeper and more mature than I at times can give it credit for, because she understands and feels and is impacted by diabetes way more than she lets on, I think, sometimes. Mm-hmm. And she does a really good job of living with it, just like anybody else does a good job of living with whatever they have, But I can totally see that Jake may be in the back of his mind, as well as he looks like he's, kicking butt with this and everything. Probably felt like, hey, I'm by myself here, Stinks.
Right. Yeah.
It really is interesting. I mean, to hear it put out that way. So here's my other question. Your other two kids who we're not talking about, how old are they?
So there are two older ones. So they are, our daughter Keller is 11, and then Griffin is 9. So
an 11 and a 9 who...
No diabetes.
Thus far, no diabetes. And Are they, like, is it like a horror movie for them now? Or are they just waiting to walk through a door and get hit in the head with an axe? Like, do you think they're just walking around going like, when is it my turn? Or do you not allow them to think about it that way? Do they not recognize that just because one or two, you know what I mean? Do they not think about it like that?
Yeah, well, they definitely, they didn't really worry about it before Annie was diagnosed, but that, that night, it was kind of a traumatic night when we're testing Annie's blood sugar. I'm trying to make dinner,
Right.
Jake's going low. It was kind of a crazy time. It was the night before Griffin, my 9-year-old's birthday. So he all of a sudden started worrying about, am I still going to have a birthday party tomorrow? There was a lot of craziness going on, but the older two they were sad and did say, does that mean that we're going to get diabetes too? And
right.
I said, the chances are so small. I said, but if you do, obviously, I mean, you've seen Jake's doing exactly what you guys are doing when we can handle this. So, I do think the chances are really slim for them. Also, all these viruses that seem to have set, Jake and now Annie over the edge into diabetes. Everybody has had those viruses, and it's only been Jake and Annie. So I think in my mind, I do feel like they maybe not have the same genetics, but you never know. You never know.
So where are you at with looking into it? Have you considered doing TrialNet to see if they have any of the markers, or? I don't think I don't think I want to for them. The same way I felt with Annie, I didn't want to have a gray answer that, okay, there are 2 antibodies there. It might happen, it might not. I knew that for me mentally that information was not going to be healthy. But I know for TrialNet, for their purposes, trying to figure out why all this happens, I think our family would be pretty interesting for them. So I'm not quite sure. I don't think I want to get Keller and Griffin, our 2 older ones, tested, but probably my husband and I will get tested and to see where the antibodies are. I don't know. I haven't totally decided. I'm just mumbling out loud. No, you're not. It's such an incredibly difficult conversation because, let's say it's one genetic marker and then it never happens and you worry about the rest of your life. But let's say it's 4 and it's going to happen and you could maybe take steps to keep insulin production going for as long as possible. It's such a, I don't know. I have a son who's done TrialNet, but we don't always keep up with it. And there are times when I look at him and I go, we should keep up with it more. And I spoke to somebody recently. I don't think the podcast episode's gone up yet, but they have a child who they know is going to get type 1 diabetes. It's coming. It's definitely coming. And they don't have, that mother was happy to know. And so it's Sam Fold, the baseball player, told me he's not having his kids tested. And he doesn't care. And You know what I mean? Like it's I guess it really is a personal preference thing. And you can't ask an 11-year-old, hey, would you like to get a test to find out if you're probably or probably not going to get type 1 diabetes? They'd be like, please stop talking to me about things like this.
Right.
You know, so I think you do whatever's comforting for you, honestly.
I mean, looking back, so one of the, with Annie say, I was afraid to have her tested. I really was, because I knew that I would know the signs and we would catch it. And we did. And we caught it, her A1C is 7.5. So we've caught it pretty early, no ketones. And so one of my thoughts for having it done is, we won't miss it. We'll catch it before things got bad. But we did anyway.
You did. You absolutely did.
So I feel good about that. So I don't know, but I don't regret not having her tested, because we had a couple years where I wasn't just staring at her wondering if she had diabetes, because I'm sure she would have come up with many of the markers. So
it is funny how we do what we do. Like you drew that kind of imaginary line in the air, like 2 years old. If she doesn't have it after 2, then she's not getting it, because that's when Jake got it. Or when Arden was first diagnosed, I remember for the whole first year just thinking that I was struggling, but when she turned 1, somehow, like, having a calendar year of 1 year of life with diabetes, that I was just going to be like, I don't know what I thought. I thought I was going to wake up one day and like maybe, the secret to diabetes was going to be very clear to me. And when that didn't happen, I was like, huh. And then I just remember moving my line to 2 years. I was like, it'll be 2 years, then I'll figure it out. So it's a very arbitrary, meaningless thing, but people do it all the time. You know what I mean? So I think it's very, I don't know if it's a way you protect yourself or a way you keep yourself from thinking about things or what it ends up being. But I do know that it doesn't really ever work out. So.
Right. I mean, Annie did pass that 2 years and 1 month mark. And there was some relief. And I was like, well, what was I thinking? Why would she have gotten it now?
Exactly
so
when he got it.
It's like I set this deadline for myself or for her. And then I didn't really abide by my own rules, No,
it's not. And so
anyway.
How do you and your husband handle the management? Like, is it, like, I didn't ask you, do you work during the day or?
Yeah, I do. I work from home. So I do nutrition writing, and I'm home, which is amazing right now. I'm really appreciating that now that because Annie's not in preschool yet.
Yeah. And
she's home with either a nanny or my mother-in-law. And, so that's awesome. And I'm basically the like you talk about with you and your wife. I'm kind of the CEO of the diabetes, but my husband is awesome stepping in when if I'm out of town or whatever.
Right.
And it's funny though, in the middle of the night he sleeps through all the alarms, and sometimes I do too. I mean, you know how that goes. It's like you finally wake up, you're like, oh my gosh, this alarm has been going off for over an hour. What was I doing? But I always laugh because there was one night where my husband's name is Brian. When Brian, I was sleeping. I totally was sleeping through the alarm, and it was charging on his side of the bed. So he looked at it. He's like, Jen, it says LOW. And then he just went back to sleep. I was like, it says LOW, And so it was like, clearly like I was the one in charge, he was just going to give me the information and then everything was going to be cool.
Jen, I think one of the kids is going to die. Good night. And so
things probably aren't okay,
Wake me up, like, if the ambulance comes or whatever. Maybe, maybe not. I'll sleep through that, though. But no, it is what you segment it, right? Like, it's your job. And it also shows that, what I think, joking aside, what it does show is that sometimes when your CGM says low, it's obviously something you want to take care of very immediately. But again, really might not be the end of the whole world. You know what I mean? Like, if it was really something to panic about, your husband would have shot bolt upright and been like screaming, and going nuts. And I'm sure he's seen it say low before, and you have to handle it. But it's not it's not the end of the world. That's for sure. Was he low when you went in and checked?
I just gave him some marshmallows, and the arrow started heading up, and I didn't finger prick him.
You didn't bother checking? Yeah. Marshmallows in his sleep, or does he wake up for it?
Yeah, no. So he won't drink. A lot of kids will drink the juice. I know you said Arden drinks juice while she's sleeping. The first time I tried that, I think I stabbed him like in the eye or something, and it ruined it. So We do marshmallows. He opens his mouth, they kind of dissolve, and he eats them and doesn't wake up. Mm-hmm. So it's disgusting, and I'm a dietitian, and it kills me every time I do it.
But it works, right?
But it works. It works. We just brush the teeth really well in the morning.
Everybody finds a different thing. Yeah, I love just the little plastic straw hits Arden in the lip, and I'm like, half a juice, and her mouth opens a little bit, and it's fascinating because
it's like a nursing baby,
just
probably
sucks it right in. It's gone in 20 seconds, and sometimes I'm like, you can tell if she's thirsty in the middle, like, because I'm like, no, stop, like that's enough. You know, like you can have water if you want more to drink, but not that. Because it's funny, I'm sure everyone goes through the same struggle. You give your kid a bottle of water and you're like, hey, I need you to drink some water, or stay hydrated, even if it's not around diabetes. And my kids, I don't know about everyone else's, they sip at water like I'm like, just drink it. I'm like, you need to drink the bottle of water, drink the bottle of water. My son's going to baseball and I'm like, you need to get hydrated, or stay hydrated. And he just sips at it like it's English tea. And I'm like, no, drink it down. I can't drink that much. But man, that juice box, 20 seconds is probably an over-exaggeration, just gone. And she never wakes up. It's fantastic. Yeah, like anybody that has that going can appreciate that because it is really helpful. Now, last night was the last day her pod was going to expire last night, like 8:30 at night. And my wife was working late. My son was here with his SAT prep class, which, I mean, that kid is working really hard at that. So I tried to bug out. Like I tried to get out of the room. So my exciting life, I went upstairs and watched Supergirl and folded laundry, which was my amazing evening last night. Oh my God, amazing. And so I was upstairs folding laundry. I expected my wife to come home a little earlier. She didn't. Arden's upstairs doing her homework in her room. And everything's just going well, and the guy that's there for the class leaves, and I take the dogs out, and my wife comes in, and we start talking, and we're all talking for a while. Arden says, hey, can I have some popcorn? We pop her some popcorn. She goes upstairs. Everything's great. She goes to bed. And my wife and I have this like hour and a half to ourselves, and it's too late. We should be asleep. I don't even know what we're doing sitting up, just trying to remember that we know each other, I guess. And we're sitting there. And I just thought, oh my God, we never changed her pump. Like it's been expired for like 2 hours now. And I was like, oh, it'll make it, and it was doing great. Her blood sugars were great. So I was like, oh, maybe it'll just 80 hours. Because, the Omnipod goes that extra 8 hours after it expires, right? And I'm like, I'll make it. And then I started doing the math and I was like, I'm going to have to change it at 4:00 in the morning if I don't do it now. And so I was like, all right. So we stopped what we were doing. I was like, can you pause this? TiVo, fantastic. And pause this television. And I went upstairs and changed her pump, like while she was sleeping. So she did like, she's like, hey, what's going on? I said, hey, we forgot to change your pump. And she's like, okay, where are you going to put the new one? I said, just the opposite side of your belly. And she was like, all right. And she just laid there. I stuck it on. The only thing she sort of perked up for enough was, and if you have an Omnipod, I guess but there's that like countdown of clicking, right? She likes to count them for some reason. So she's like, well, I said, there's one. She's like, shh. She shushes me. I'm like, okay. And then it's just
not this time.
The indignities I have to live through. I'm like, okay, well, let me be quiet. And then they click, and it went in. And then I bolused a little bit to kind of make up for the switch. And, I went to bed. I hung out long enough just to see her blood sugar move, just to make sure, she was getting insulin. And then I passed out pretty well. But yeah, it was one of those things that, I don't know, it's just so much of our conversation right now today is about how things seem worse than they end up actually being. And that's one of those things. Like, I can see someone else just throwing dishes. Like, I can't believe I have to change this pump and I forgot. And like, it's, oh my God, they're sleeping. And there's so many ways you can become dramatic about those things. And they're not fair. Like, of course it's not fair. Of course there's a ton of kids all over my town who are sleeping or not being woken up to get their insulin pump put on. And it isn't fair when you think about it like that. But if you look at it from the, what I think is the correct perspective, it was no big deal. Like, it just kind of wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, it took 5 minutes and, my wife sat downstairs and waited, patiently to restart The Wall, which is my favorite new television show. Do you watch?
No, I don't know. Okay. The Wall.
It's a game show where they randomly drop balls down a wall, then they fall in slots for money. And all right, so there's two people on. Here's why I'm a horrible person. I've learned this through the wall. Okay. So there's two people on, and it's usually, let me drink something. What makes it worse is they only have contestants on who are like really great people. Like, so they really deserve some money. Like, you know, like people who help communities, or last week it was like a bus driver who saved a woman from jumping off a bridge, or like that kind of stuff. Like, you're people who really you'd feel good about getting the money, right? I'm going to really give an insight into myself here. So one of the people goes in seclusion and answers these kind of random questions. The other person decides where they're going to drop the ball before they find out if the guy answers it. So they show you the answer to the question. You decide, can he get this right? Then the ball just randomly drops down the ball. It could fall into $1 million slot. It could fall into a $1 slot. If the guy gets it wrong and it falls into $1 million slot, you lose $1 million. What I've learned is, and this is about myself, I am happier when they lose than when they win. So I love it when they win. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Good for them. But there's something about, and I feel bad even admitting this now, there's something about watching somebody who's like up like $2 million, like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then the red ball comes down and falls into like 500,000. They lose $500,000 right away. And I'm like, I start giggling. I think I'm not well because I start giggling. It makes me so happy and I don't know why.
I think that when people win a lot of money, then they're not happy. No. And you know that deep down
you're
inside.
You're being too good to me. I think I just like watching them be sad for some reason. And so I thought I was alone in this. And then one night Arden was in the room and she's like, what's this? And we explained the thing to her. And she's like, oh, that's this. And it went down and the woman like lost all of her money and Arden jumped up and high-fived me. And I was like, that's a real person. And she's like, it's hilarious. So anyway, no one will, next week I'll have no downloads on the podcast. People are like, oh my God, he's a monster. I'm not going to listen anymore. But I'm also genuinely just as happy when they win. I don't know what it is. Like I don't know.
It's balance. You just want balance. Okay.
It's amazing. Like I giggle. Like I'm like, they lost. Oh my gosh. Anyway, maybe that's me feeling like, look, I've shouldered enough of my load. Like everybody else better get a little ding too. But these people have already been. Hey, listen, I'm gonna have to edit this out. I sound really bad in this story. Okay, so Annie, you were saying earlier that you hope that she doesn't have a lull where she doesn't need Lantus because you want to get her right onto an insulin pump. Is that right?
Yes. And, it's a couple things. She doesn't love the shots. And yes, drawing up a shot is more complicated than pressing the button on the pump. But it's more that, like, I'm really appreciating the potential for the micro doses with the pump. With the Omnipod, I could give her 0.05 units and she could have pretzels as a snack. And she's a toddler. We can't expect her to eat all of her carbs at her meals, and especially when there are 3 other kids running around the house eating apples and pretzels for snacks.
Yeah. So for snacking is a big part of it, and plus not only that, but you have a kid with a really a really great blood A1C, right? So I'm assuming that's going to be your goal for Annie too. And I did want to ask you about that before we got off, and it's coming up on an hour. But are you going to have the same kind of like A1C goals for her that you have for him, or do you think because your doctor's going to tell you differently, right? Yeah, and
it's Jake's A1C. They have said, I guess a couple appointments ago, his A1C was 6.3, but he was having too many lows, and they were basically like, this A1C is not good, with all these lows.
So you didn't have a real, what you would consider to be a real A1C, because you can't have, and let's explain this to people, like you can, an A1C is an average of your blood sugar. So if you're 300 for a lot of the day, but your blood sugar is 50 for a lot of the day, your A1C might falsely look better. You can't achieve a low A1C by having extended lows. That's not a healthy way to achieve it.
Exactly. Right. So that's, and our endocrinologist she's just awesome. So she was like, next time if you have this A1C, I don't want to see as many lows. So next time in, he was, I think at that previous time he was 6.3, and then this time 6.2, and many fewer lows. So it was like big win. We went down a little bit and got rid of a lot of the lows.
Where do you set the your thresholds on the Dexcom? Like, where do you get alarmed at?
70 and then 180. It was in the summer when he's not in school, it's 140, but it's just so disruptive at school within his classroom. Because
he's going to the nurse too, right?
Yeah, well, they do. He treats lows in the class, and then if he's not come up after 15 minutes, then the nurse gets involved.
And he's 7. He's not giving himself insulin on his own or anything like that.
He does. He's been, he does his own blood sugar. He started that in kindergarten, and now that he's reading, he's giving his own insulin.
Wow. Cool.
Just as long as the nurse is looking over his shoulder.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, Arden and I just text, so I guess it's a little different. But it's, like just now, like I'm seeing a little bit of a rise from her bolus, from school, like what we did when we were first together here. And so I just texted her to give herself a little more insulin, and it really is fantastic, actually. So I love the no nurse's office thing for us.
Yeah, it is good. I mean, our nurse is fantastic. We have their elementary school has one of the few, they're called school-based health centers. They're in a Spanish immersion elementary school. So they learn Spanish, which is super cool. But they also, because there are a lot of low-income families in the neighborhood, and a lot of those families don't have insurance. So there's this whole clinic in their school, basically. So there's full-time nurse, med tech. There's a pediatrician once a week. So he is Jake is set up got lots of awesome help if needed.
That's amazing. Good for them. That's
cool.
Really cool.
We're lucky.
Good for you. Excellent. Jen, we did it. We talked on the podcast just like you wanted. It worked out very well, I think. Did you have a good time? Did we not talk about anything that you were hoping to talk about?
No. One little thing. I just wanted to say this because I thought you would appreciate this, is that so when we got to the emergency room with Annie and she already had her CGM on, I was like, they never don't admit new type 1s. And I was like, please. I was like, just tell me, give me a ratio. Send us home. We're going to be fine. And I was like, it's my son's birthday besides today.
Right.
And the doctor's like, you are the first person that has ever shown up with a newly diagnosed type 1 already wearing a CGM. He's like, you can go.
That's great.
So I felt like I won something.
Hi, I'm just coming by to let you know my kid has diabetes, but I don't really know why we're here. I just felt like we should tell somebody.
Yeah, it's like, can you just give us some prescriptions for syringes? I just need those.
Yeah, I need some syringes and a little. I have insulin, but a little wouldn't hurt. And I gotta get home. So thanks. Bye. That's different. That's for sure. That is a much different story than most people are going to have.
But that's it.
Yeah, good for you. That's amazing. Well, I wish you guys a ton of luck, and obviously you have 4 kids, so you need it. But
all of us need help. And there's no one out there that doesn't need help, right?
Yeah. Do you always know where all 4? I guess they're still young. Like, I know these people who have 4 kids, and they never seem to know where all 4 of them are. Like they have like a vague idea. Like, I think this one's with our neighbor. Like that. But does that happen to you or no?
We usually know where they all are, but it definitely takes. I feel like sometimes it takes 2 adults per kid to take care of them. Like they say, with all the sports they do, and our oldest is on a traveling lacrosse team, and we're always trying to figure out who can take care of our kids because we can't. So
where do we put this kid? All right. Well, I don't know what I'm calling this episode. Annie was psyched might be it. I don't know where we're gonna go. We'll figure it out. But I really do appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Not at all.
I love your podcast. So keep it up.
I'm having a great time doing it, so I appreciate you saying that very much. Thank you. All right, have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.
Huge thanks to Jen for coming on and telling her family story so we can find out more about how Jake and Annie are doing, and hopefully you can find yourself in her story a little bit too. Thank you again to Dexcom and Omnipod for sponsoring the Juicebox podcast. Couldn't do it without you guys. Big ups. Go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or dexcom.com/juicebox or both of them to find out more. There's links in the show notes you can also click on. Don't forget too, Bold with Insulin t-shirts are coming. More information coming quickly. And what else? Oh, nothing else. Have a great day.